The grand chamber of the Galactic Council echoed with hushed voices and flickering holograms as representatives of 12 species convened, each casting anxious glances around the circular hall. They had seen the rise and fall of empires, had wielded power over countless systems, but the existence of a rising power on the edge of their controlled territories was more than unnerving. Humanity, though young in galactic terms, had demonstrated a resilience and tenacity that no one had anticipated. And now, it had become a problem the Council could no longer ignore. Presiding over the gathering was High Chancellor Dirox, an imposing figure from the Zygarde species, known for his tactical mind and ruthless judgment. His dark, scale form loomed over the assembly as he addressed the Council, his voice a low rumble that commanded silence. "Our attempts at containing humanity have failed," he began, his gaze sweeping the room. "They have rebuffed our diplomacy, infiltrated our intelligence networks, and countered every act of sabotage with ruthless efficiency. Their defiance threatens the balance we have worked so long to achieve." Around him, the Council members shifted uncomfortably. The sleek-furred Tulith representative clicked his mandibles in irritation, while Ambassador Othin, a gray-skinned Valian with deep-set eyes, muttered, "Humanity is but one species. Why should we allow them to cause such unrest? Surely, we can remove this threat with minimal disruption." Chancellor Dirox's eyes narrowed. "We believe so, yet time and time again, they have countered us. They are unpredictable, ruthless." And he paused, emphasizing the word, highly capable. Silence hung thick in the air. Then, a veteran alien general stepped forward. Maruk, from the warlike Krogan species, his scarred face a testament to countless battles, cleared his throat. His voice was gruff, carrying a note of caution. "We have seen what they can do," he warned. "Their soldiers do not fight like ours. They adapt, they endure. And there is one among them who even the humans fear. They call him the Baba Yaga." The name lingered, unfamiliar yet chilling. Ambassador Othin scoffed, his lips curling. "A human myth, perhaps? Why should we concern ourselves with a single soldier, even if he is feared?" Maruk's eyes hardened, his voice dropping to a low growl. "It is no myth. This Baba Yaga has dismantled entire fleets single-handedly. His ruthlessness knows no bounds. He leaves none alive, and he does not stop." The Council murmured nervously. Tales of the Baba Yaga had reached even the farthest corners of the galaxy, whispered among soldiers and mercenaries as a phantom who embodied death itself. Humanity's own forces shuddered when his name was spoken. Dirox's gaze sharpened as he listened. He had dismissed such stories as exaggerations. Yet now, seeing Maruk's haunted expression, he wondered if there was truth to them. "We cannot afford to lose any more resources or credibility," Dirox declared firmly, silencing the murmurs. "Our answer must be decisive. We must summon the Kurlak assassins." A collective gasp swept through the chamber. The Kurlak were not just any assassins. They were a shadowy faction of genetically engineered killers, feared across the galaxy for their unparalleled lethality. Led by Garlith, a warlord whose very name was synonymous with carnage, they answered only to the Galactic Council and obeyed without question. The Tulith representative tilted his head, calculating. The Kurlak demand an exorbitant price. But if they succeed, the human threat would be extinguished, and this Baba Yaga would be nothing but a memory. Ambassador Othin, always a pragmatist, voiced a lingering doubt. And if they fail? If this Baba Yaga is indeed as formidable as Maruk suggests, are we prepared for the consequences of such an escalation? But Dirox's mind was set. He straightened, fixing his fellow council members with a resolute gaze. There is no turning back now. Humanity has challenged our authority, defied our edicts, and tested our patience. If we do not strike now, our rule will fracture. He tapped the command into his terminal, initiating the summoning. The hologram in the center of the chamber flickered, taking the shape of a hulking figure shrouded in darkness. Two glowing eyes stared out, cold and unfeeling. Garlith, the leader of the Kurlak assassins, was on the line. "Chancellor D-Rox," the figure rumbled, his voice as deep and relentless as grinding stone. "I trust you would not summon us without reason." D-Rox held his chin high. "We have a task for you, Warlord Garlith. Humanity is the target, specifically a human operative known as the Baba Yaga. Destroy him, and bring us proof of humanity's submission." Garlith's eyes gleamed with dark amusement, as though he had been waiting for such a challenge. "Consider it done. We will bring you your trophy." The connection severed, leaving the council members to sit in uneasy silence. They had unleashed a weapon that few dared to invoke, a force of terror reserved only for the gravest of threats. Yet a sense of dread lingered in the chamber. As they dispersed, Maruk stayed behind, a furrow of worry etched across his face. D-Rox noticed and approached, his voice low. "You still doubt this course of action, General?" Maruk's gaze was fixed on the darkened hologram. "I have faced human soldiers, Chancellor. I've seen their resilience, their fury. This Baba Yaga, if he truly embodies their spirit, then we may have just signed our own death warrants." D-Rox, confident in the Council's power, dismissed Maruk's fears with a dismissive wave. "This time, we are prepared. Humanity's defiance will end." Yet, as the council chamber emptied, the silence left behind felt heavy and ominous, as if the council itself held its breath, awaiting a reckoning that even they could not foresee. John Kane sat in a dimly lit briefing room, his gaze fixed on a holographic display casting eerie blue shadows on the steel walls. He'd been summoned with an urgency that was uncommon even for his line of work. A seasoned operative, Kane was known by a title that both haunted and bolstered his reputation. Baba Yaga. Among his fellow soldiers, the name conjured whispers of respect mixed with dread. For the Galactic Council's most dangerous assassins, it would soon become a name to fear. Across the table sat General Markham, a grizzled leader with decades of military experience. His face was lined with the marks of countless battles, yet his voice held a gravity now reserved only for the most dire threats. "Kane, this isn't just another hit and run. The Galactic Council has escalated," Markham began, a controlled fire in his eyes. "They've called in the Kurlak assassins, led by Garlith. We have intel that suggests their mission is simple: eliminate you. They think taking out our best will bring humanity to its knees." Kane's expression didn't change. His jawline remained set, his gaze unyielding. He'd heard of the Kurlak assassins. Rumors painted them as shadows in the dark, merciless, engineered for death, and loyal to none but the Council. "They'll come hard and fast," Kane replied, his voice like gravel. "If they're expecting a show of force, let's give them something they'll remember." Markham leaned forward, his gaze assessing. "This isn't about brute force, Kane. They're playing on their own turf, an asteroid field outside regulated space. They know every crevice, every gravitational drift. You'll be alone. We can't risk backup. It's a covert mission, and we need this handled with your precision." Kane nodded. He didn't require a battalion, nor did he want one. For years, he had trained for situations like this, operating in solitude and confronting threats designed to intimidate lesser men. The Kurlak might be formidable, but he was the one humanity called when impossible odds demanded a reckoning. After the briefing, Kane returned to his quarters to prepare. He opened a case containing his weapons: a custom kinetic rifle, a pair of razor-sharp combat knives, and a semi-automatic pistol he'd used for years. Each piece had its purpose, each movement in a practiced ritual as he assembled his arsenal. Beside the weapons lay a small locket, a relic from an old life he barely remembered, a reminder of the humanity he was so often forced to bury in the line of duty. His final task was to don the black, reinforced suit that bore no insignia or identifying marks. It was a suit that marked him as no one, a ghost in the dark, and yet every soldier who saw it knew who he was. Kane was the embodiment of lethal purpose, and by the end of this mission, he would ensure the Council's assassins knew it too. When Kane boarded his transport, The weight of his mission settled over him like the calm before a storm. As the ship's engines fired up, carrying him through the vast silence of space, he mentally reviewed the asteroid field schematics. He pictured the jagged rocks floating in an endless expanse, the shadows deepened by erratic orbits, perfect for ambushes. It was terrain he would have to make his ally. The moment he landed on the edge of the field, Kane activated his heads-up display, scanning for life signatures. Sure enough, they were already close. Dozens of faint blips moving in synchronized patterns. Garlith and his assassins were not wasting any time. Kane didn't need time either. With precise movements, he traversed the rocks, his steps silent as he slid into the shadows. A pair of Kurlak scouts crossed his path, unaware of his presence. With swift, calculated strikes, he dispatched them before they could make a sound, his combat knife glinting momentarily before it disappeared back into its sheath. He moved on, leaving nothing but silence behind him. As he advanced, Kane kept his focus sharp, his instincts honed to a razor's edge. The Kurlak assassins operated with military precision, but Kane recognized their flaw. They fought in numbers, leaning on their coordinated tactics to overwhelm their targets. Kane's approach was different. He was trained to turn any environment into his weapon, to bend the odds until the advantage lay solely with him. Then he felt it, a faint disturbance in the stillness. He turned, his senses tingling, and found himself face to face with Garlith. The alien warlord towered over him, his presence an imposing blend of dark armor and lethal intent. Behind him, several more Kurlak assassins emerged, their movements tense, eyes locked onto Kane. But Kane showed no hint of fear. Instead, a grim smile tugged at his mouth. "So, you're the Council's best?" he muttered, gripping his rifle tighter. Garlith snarled, his voice like grinding metal. "And you are the human they call Baba Yaga?" Pathetic. I expected a monster. Kane chuckled, a low, mirthless sound. "Guess I'll have to disappoint you, then." Without waiting for Garlith's reply, he opened fire, taking the assassins by surprise. His bullets cut through the air with lethal precision, and as the Kurlak scrambled for cover, Kane moved with the same ruthless efficiency that had earned him his reputation. He shifted between cover and open ground, pushing forward, relentless and unyielding. In the midst of battle, Kane's mind was singular, focused, the world reduced to targets and tactics. His moves were deliberate, each step calculated as he advanced, chipping away at Garlith's forces. And even as the enemy retaliated, trying to corner him in the asteroid shadows, Kane only grew bolder, his determination burning like a quiet storm. By the end of their first clash, several assassins lay motionless, their weapons scattered. Garlith, observing the scene, took a step back, his confidence momentarily shaken. Kane lowered his rifle, his eyes cold as he met the alien warlord's gaze. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice calm but laced with a deadly promise. Garlith's snarl returned, deeper and more venomous. "Then let us end it, human." As the two squared off, a tension hung in the void between them, ready to erupt into chaos once more. And as Kane braced himself, he knew he'd do whatever it took to ensure the Galactic Council would remember the name Baba Yaga. A deathly silence fell across the asteroid field, broken only by the soft, metallic hum of distant energy weapons and the faint hiss of Kane's breath in his helmet. He had been hunting these shadows for hours, moving like a wraith through the labyrinthine rocks, picking off assassins one by one. But now, as he rounded a sharp bend, he found himself facing the core of Garlith's forces, the dark-eyed warlord standing at their head. Garlith's expression was cold and calculated, a stark contrast to the frenzy of his assassins surrounding him. His powerful, armored form seemed to drink in the faint starlight, making him appear even more menacing. "Impressive human," he sneered, watching Kane closely. "But you're just one man, and I have the finest killers in the galaxy at my command. Do you truly think you stand a chance?" Kane's gaze never wavered. He gripped his rifle, feeling its reassuring weight in his hands, every muscle taut and ready. He had spent his life defying impossible odds, but this was unlike anything he had faced before. He knew the stories of the Kurlak assassins, their unwavering loyalty, their lethal skill. And yet, here they were, converging on him like predators circling prey. "I'm not here to run," Cain replied, his voice a low, unyielding growl. "And if you want to bring me down, you'll have to do it yourself." Garlatha's grin was a grim promise of violence. With a swift gesture, he signaled his assassins forward, and in an instant, the air erupted with gunfire. Cain dived behind a jagged rock formation, his mind racing as he calculated his next move. His enemies moved with deadly precision, firing in perfect synchronization, trying to box him in. But Cain had no intention of letting them control the field. His years of training had taught him the value of adaptability, and now he used the asteroid's chaotic terrain to his advantage. Darting between boulders and crags, he fired off quick, precise shots, each bullet finding its mark. The assassins' numbers dwindled as they fell to his relentless assault, their blood splattering the cold rock. Realizing that brute force would not be enough, Garlath barked an order in his native tongue, his voice sharp and commanding. The remaining assassins shifted tactics, spreading out to encircle Cain, attempting to cut off every possible escape route. But Cain remained undeterred, his movements fluid and controlled as he adapted to their change in strategy. He dodged incoming fire with a warrior's grace, his senses heightened, his every move driven by instinct and precision. As the assassins closed in, Cain realized he had to break their formation. With a calculated move, he lobbed a small explosive into their ranks. The resulting blast shook the asteroid, sending fragments of rock and metal scattering in every direction. Amid the chaos, Cain charged forward, using the explosion as cover. His blade flashed, cutting down those who dared to stand in his path, their lifeless forms crumpling to the ground. Now, only Garlath remained. The alien warlord's eyes blazed with fury as he drew his own weapon, a serrated blade that gleamed ominously under the faint light. His confidence was unshaken, even in the face of Cain's onslaught. "You may have defeated my assassins, but you've only proven what I already knew. You are indeed worthy of facing me." Cain raised his rifle, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not here to prove anything. I'm here to end this." Garlath lunged, his blade a blur as he struck with inhuman speed and precision. Cain barely managed to sidestep the attack, countering with a quick succession of gunshots that ricocheted off Garlatha's armor. The warlord was relentless, his movements calculated and ruthless as he advanced on Cain, each strike pushing him closer to the edge of the cliffside they were now fighting on. The fight was brutal and unrelenting, a dance of death between two masters of combat. Cain dodged and parried with expert precision, his every move a testament to his training and experience. But Garlatha's strength was formidable, each swing of his blade powerful enough to crush stone. It took all of Cain's focus and agility to avoid the blows, each one a reminder of the narrow line he walked between life and death. In a desperate gamble, Cain shifted his grip, rolling beneath Garlatha's next strike, and bringing his knife up in a sharp, lethal thrust. His blade found a gap in the warlord's armor, piercing through with brutal efficiency. Garlath let out a roar of pain, stumbling back as dark blood began to pour from the wound. Cain rose, his breath ragged but his resolve unbroken. He met Garlatha's glare, the determination in his eyes unyielding. "You wanted a monster," Cain said, his voice steady and cold. "Here I am." With one final surge of strength, Cain struck again, his movements swift and merciless. His blade tore through Garlatha's defenses, each blow a calculated strike aimed at bringing the warlord to his knees. Garlath fought back with every ounce of his remaining strength, but Cain's relentless assault was unstoppable, a fury honed by years of battle. At last, with a final, guttural cry, Garlath fell, his body crumpling to the ground lifeless. Cain stood over him, his breath heavy, his gaze fixed on the fallen warlord. The silence that followed was deafening, the asteroid field a graveyard for the Galactic Council's finest. As he looked around at the destruction, Kane knew this was only the beginning. Garlith and his assassins had been formidable, but the Council's resolve would only harden in the face of this defeat. They would come again, perhaps with greater force, but he was ready. Kane turned, leaving the battlefield behind, his steps echoing in the vast silence of space. The galaxy would remember the name Baba Yaga, and the Council would soon realize that humanity's spirit could not be broken. The quiet hum of Kane's ship accompanied him back to Earth, the weight of his mission pressing heavily on him as he approached home soil. The asteroid field still lingered in his mind. The relentless assassins, Garlith's final, furious gaze, and the stark silence that followed their demise. But this was a silence he had won, one that reverberated through the ranks of those who had underestimated humanity. As the ship touched down on the base runway, General Markham stood waiting, his posture rigid, face unreadable. The moment Kane exited the craft, Markham stepped forward, his gaze assessing yet filled with an unspoken pride. They both knew the cost of this victory. The Galactic Council would not take this defeat lightly. But for now, Kane had proven that humanity was no mere footnote in the vast galactic order. Kane, Markham said, his voice steady, the Council is in shock. Their prized assassins destroyed. Garlith dead. They realize that what they thought would be an easy conquest will be met with resistance. And they know who led it. Kane nodded, his face impassive. They'll come back. Probably sooner rather than later. Markham's mouth tightened into a thin line. Maybe. But now they know we're not easy prey. You've given them a message they can't ignore. Kane held the general's gaze, understanding the unspoken weight of his words. Humanity had always been the underdog, a species with limited resources and a solitary planet in a universe filled with powerful empires. But the Galactic Council's first true encounter with Earth's finest had shifted the scales, if only slightly. As they walked into the command center, Markham briefed Kane on the Council's response so far. Reports had trickled in from scattered sources, revealing that the Council's elite were baffled and apprehensive. Their assassins had been a symbol of galactic power, meant to intimidate and subjugate any who dared resist. But now, the tale of their defeat would ripple through the galaxies, sparking new rumors, stirring whispers of humanity's resilience. The command center was buzzing with subdued excitement. Officers and soldiers glanced in Kane's direction, their eyes filled with a newfound respect. Word of his mission had spread, and although the details were classified, everyone knew he'd face impossible odds and emerge victorious. In a world where humanity was often regarded as a minor player, this victory was a beacon of hope and defiance. After the debrief, Kane found himself in the base's quiet observation deck, looking out over the sprawling Earth landscape. The weight of his role settled over him, like a mantle, each victory a reminder of what he defended. He knew this mission was far from the end. It was merely a signal to a galaxy that Earth would not be trampled upon, and it was his name that carried that signal forward. A voice interrupted his thoughts, and he turned to see Markham had joined him. The general leaned against the railing, his gaze distant. "You know, they'll probably offer a reward for your head," he said, a hint of humor in his voice. The Baba Yaga isn't exactly the type of legend they want roaming free. Kane gave a faint smile. They can try. Let them send whatever they want. Markham's expression softened slightly, his admiration clear. This isn't just about you, Kane. It's about all of us. Earth's resilience, our will to fight, is something they never expected. They think they can crush us because we're small, isolated. But they don't understand that our strength doesn't lie in numbers. Kane looked out at the landscape, feeling the weight of the truth in Markham's words. They're about to learn that the hard way. Later, as the news of his victory spread beyond the base, the Council's fears began to take root across the galaxy. In distant halls of power, whispers circulated of a lone human who had single-handedly taken down the Kurlak assassins and slain their ruthless leader. The legend of Baba Yaga spread, painted in equal parts awe and caution. To the Council, it was a reminder of their own vulnerability. To the outlying worlds and resistance movements, it was a spark of hope. In the weeks that followed, Earth's military received a flood of messages, both warnings and tentative alliances from alien factions that had long remained neutral. The galaxy was beginning to shift, recalibrate, with humanity at its axis. Kane's mission had become more than a fight for survival. It was a declaration of Earth's unbreakable spirit. Back on Earth, Kane resumed his training, preparing himself for the inevitable retaliation. He knew this victory was only the beginning, and that the Council would regroup, send new threats, try to erode Earth's resolve. But Kane, the Baba Yaga, was ready. He had become a legend among his own people, an embodiment of the defiance that ran through humanity's veins. As he stepped into the training field, surrounded by soldiers who looked to him with renewed respect, Kane knew the Council would remember his name. More importantly, he knew that humanity, once seen as fragile and inconsequential, had taken its first steps toward becoming a power in its own right. And if they dared to come again, he would be there, unyielding and unstoppable. The galaxy now knew humanity's strength, and for the first time, it was afraid.